Okay, so you want to own a convenience store. Find a location on a busy corner, stock the coolers, keep the doors open 24/7, and watch 1,000 people a day walk in for cigarettes, energy drinks, and lottery tickets. That is the dream. A box that never closes, selling things people already want at prices nobody thinks twice about. No reservations, no chef, no seasonal slump, just a register that never stops ringing. That is not a fantasy. The average 7-Eleven in the United States pulls in approximately $1.8 million a year. There are 152,396 convenience stores in this country, generating a combined $837 billion annually. 80% of all gasoline sold in America moves through a convenience store lot. 82% of all cigarettes sold in this country cross a convenience store counter. And the gross margin on almost everything behind that counter sits between 30 and 50%. Sounds like one of the cleanest businesses you could enter. It is not. The average single-store convenience store owner takes home between $40,000 and $120,000 a year. Most end up closer to the bottom. That is $1.8 million in revenue and maybe $60,000 in your pocket. The net profit margin on a typical convenience store sits between 2 and 5%. For every dollar that crosses your counter, you keep 2 to 5 cents of it. So where does the rest go? And how do the ones who actually build wealth from this do it? First, understand that there is no single business called a convenience store. There are 4 completely different businesses wearing the same sign. The first is the independent, a mom-and-pop operation, 1,500 to 3,000 square feet, usually run by the owner standing behind the counter 14 hours a day. Revenue sits between $500,000 and $1.5 million a year. Net margin hovers around 3 to 5%. The store survives on tobacco, lottery tickets, beer, and the fact that the owner does not pay themselves a proper wage. This is the majority of what exists, and it is the model that is slowly dying. The second is the gas station convenience store. Circle K, Shell, BP, the ones attached to a fuel canopy. Here is what almost nobody outside the industry understands about gasoline. The store does not make money selling fuel. After credit card processing fees alone, which can exceed 8 cents per gallon, the net profit on a gallon of gas is somewhere between 2 and 7 cents on a $3.50 gallon. The fuel exists for one reason only. It gets cars onto the lot. Once someone is standing next to a pump, odds are decent they walk inside and spend $7.80 on items carrying a 40 to 60% margin. The gas is a loss leader subsidizing the box behind it. The third model is the franchise, specifically 7-Eleven, because their structure is unlike almost any other franchise in America. Most franchises charge a royalty on gross sales, typically 5 to 8%. 7-Eleven does not do that. Instead, they take a percentage of your gross profit, not revenue, gross profit. And that percentage is between 45 and 57% depending on your agreement. In exchange, they provide the land, the building, and the equipment. You provide the labor, the inventory, and your entire life. The average 7-Eleven franchisee takes home between $50,000 and $75,000 a year. For running a store they do not own, under rules they did not write, selling products they did not choose, at prices they cannot change. The fourth model is the one that is winning. Wawa, Sheetz, Casey's General Stores, Buc-ee's. None of them franchise. Every one of them corporate-owned and food first. Casey's is functionally a pizza restaurant that happens to sell gasoline, with nearly 3,000 locations and over $500 million in net income last fiscal year. Their CEO, Darren Rebelez, calls pizza the company's crown jewel, and describes Casey's as a convenience QSR, a quick-service restaurant that happens to have a fuel canopy. Buc-ee's generates an estimated $50 to $100 million per location annually, 10 to 20 times the industry average, with 2/3 of revenue from inside the store. They ban 18-wheelers from the lot because truckers spend less inside than families. These are not convenience stores. They are destination retail operations that happen to have a fuel canopy attached. Now, What it actually costs to open one. If you are building an independent store from scratch, total investment runs between $60,000 and $600,000, depending on location and condition of the space. Equipment alone, the walk-in coolers, the refrigerated cases, the POS system, runs $15,000 to $100,000. Initial inventory adds another $10,000 to $80,000. On the franchise side, a 7-Eleven fee ranges from $50,000 to over $1 million for prime locations. Total initial investment runs between $163,000 and $1.66 million. But here is the hidden cost nobody warned you about until it is too late. Licenses. Specifically, alcohol licenses. A tobacco retail license costs between $10 and $200 a year, depending on the state. Cheap. Easy. The barrier is compliance, not cost. Sell one pack of cigarettes to a 17-year-old during an FDA undercover check, and you lose the license, along with 19% of your store's revenue. A lottery terminal is application-based through your state lottery commission. You do not buy it. You apply and hope they approve your location. They will not if another retailer already serves the area. That alone keeps competition out. Alcohol is where it gets expensive. In non-quota states, Tennessee, Illinois, Georgia, any qualified applicant can get a license for a few $100s a year. In quota states, the number of licenses is capped by population. The only way to get one is to buy it from someone who already has it. New Jersey stopped issuing new full liquor licenses in 1947. Today, a single license in a competitive New Jersey market sells for $1 million to $2.35 million. The Cheesecake Factory paid $2.3 million for one at Short Hills Mall. In Florida, licenses are capped at 1 per 7,500 residents per county and cannot cross county lines. Prices run $100,000 to $850,000. This is not a regulatory fee. This is the government capping supply and letting the market set the price. The license appreciates like real estate, exactly like a billboard permit. If you own a convenience store with a full liquor license in a quota state, you own something your competitor cannot replicate at any price. That license alone might be worth more than the rest of the business combined. Now, here is where people fundamentally misunderstand how this business makes money. Look at the revenue breakdown of a typical convenience store, and you would assume tobacco is the engine. It is the single largest product category, accounting for nearly 20% of in-store sales. But it contributes only about 7% of in-store gross margin. The margin on a pack of cigarettes is roughly 14%. It is the highest volume item in the store and one of the least profitable per unit. Now look at food service. Prepared food, hot dogs on the roller grill, fountain drinks, fresh coffee, made-to-order sandwiches. Food service accounts for 28.7% of in-store sales, but generates 39.6% of all in-store gross margin dollars. The average gross margin on prepared food is 56.4%. On frozen dispensed beverages, those Slurpee-style machines, the margin is 64.6%. A large fountain drink costs the store about 8 cents to pour. It sells for $1.89. A roller grill hot dog costs 35 cents and sells for $1.99. A fresh coffee costs 15 cents per cup and sells for $1.89. These are restaurant-level margins without restaurant-level labor costs. That is what this business actually looks like when you strip away the signage. Not a store that sells snacks. A restaurant that does not need a dining room. That is the dividing line. On one side, stores that make real money. On the other, stores bleeding out year after year, hoping fuel margins hold. The bottom 70% of convenience stores in America report negative in-store operating profit when fuel gross margin is excluded. They lose money inside the four walls. And if you skip the food program entirely, here is the math. Your in-store margin sits at maybe 25%. Labor and operating costs eat 22 to 28%. You are left with break-even if you are lucky. Only the ones with a real food service program consistently make money from the store itself. The top 10% generate 4 times the food service gross profit of the bottom 10%. Not a minor optimization. A different business entirely. This is why Casey's built a $500 million net income business around made-from-scratch pizza in gas stations across rural America. And beyond food service, there are revenue streams in this industry that most customers never see and most outsiders never think about. The ones that quietly determine whether an owner builds equity or just treads water. The first one most people miss is tobacco scan data rebates. Your POS system reports weekly sales data to cigarette manufacturers, Altria, RJ Reynolds, ITG brands, through what the industry calls scan data programs. For every qualifying transaction your system reports, the manufacturer pays you between 3 and 5 cents per scan. I know that sounds small, 3 to 5 cents, but multiply it across every pack, every day, every week for a full year, and a moderately busy store earns $5,000 to $25,000 in pure rebate income. Not from selling cigarettes, from reporting that you sold them. On top of that, manufacturers fund promotional price reductions called buy-downs. They pay you to discount the product to the customer. You move volume, the customer saves money, the manufacturer maintains market share, and you get reimbursed for every discounted pack through the same scan data pipeline. The customer never sees any of this. Then there is lottery. The direct margin is thin. You keep 5 to 6% commission on every ticket sold, plus 1 to 3% for cashing winning tickets. On a store selling $400,000 in lottery annually, that is roughly $24,000 in commission. Not life-changing on its own, but here is the number that matters. 95% of lottery buyers grab something else while they are in the store, and they spend 65% more per trip than non-lottery customers. The lottery machine is not a profit center. It is the most effective customer acquisition tool in the building. The ATM in the corner works the same way. Own the machine outright, and you keep the full surcharge, $2.50 to $5 per transaction. 20 to 25% of withdrawn cash gets spent immediately inside your store. The subtlest one is cooler door fees. Beverage companies, Coca-Cola, PepsiCo, Monster, Red Bull, pay for placement inside your cold vault through what the industry calls slotting fees and cooler door fees. The refrigerated section of a convenience store is some of the most valuable real estate in retail per linear foot. A well-run cold vault turns inventory 25 to 30 times a year. That turn rate is what makes thin per-unit margins work. And a well-negotiated cooler program generates thousands annually in placement income on top of the product margin. You are renting shelf space to brands. That is what the cold vault actually is. An ad platform that happens to keep drinks cold. Now, the costs that eat all of this alive. Labor. A 24/7 operation needs 3 shifts daily, 4 to 6 employees minimum. Labor consumes 14 to 30% of sales. Turnover runs 100 to 150% annually, meaning every position refills at least once a year. Shrinkage. The polite word for theft. C-stores run 2 to 4% shrinkage, well above the 1.68% retail average. 42% of that loss comes from your own employees. On a $1.5 million store, 3% shrinkage means $45,000 walking out the door annually, more than some owners take home. And if you are in a high-theft metro area, that number is not 3%. It is 5, maybe 6. That alone can turn a profitable store into a negative cash flow operation. Credit card fees. The industry paid over $21 billion in processing fees in 2024. At 2 to 3% per swipe on 80+% card transactions, a store processing $100,000 monthly loses $2,000 to $3,000 to Visa and MasterCard alone. Utilities. Refrigeration runs 8,760 hours a year. Electric bills hit $3,000 to $5,000 monthly. Remember that 7-Eleven gross profit split from earlier? Here is what it actually looks like in practice. That 45 to 57% cut happens before your operating expenses come out. You still pay for all labor, all inventory, all store-level costs out of your remaining share. So what looks like a 50-50 partnership is actually the company taking half off the top, while you absorb 100% of the operating risk underneath. Picture a modest store generating $500,000 in annual gross profit. At a 55% split, corporate takes $275,000. You keep $225,000, then pay $120,000 in labor, $50,000 in operating costs, absorb $15,000 in shrinkage. You are left with maybe $40,000 to $60,000. Now picture a high-traffic location doing $800,000 in gross profit. You would think that changes everything. It does not. At that volume, your split likely sits at 57%. Corporate takes $456,000. You keep $344,000. But a higher volume store needs more staff, more shifts, more waste. Labor hits $180,000. Operating costs run $70,000. You net maybe $80,000 to $90,000. The split punishes growth. Suki Sandhu, chairman of the National Coalition of Associations of 7-Eleven franchisees, described 2024 as a roller coaster for store owners, citing rising costs, record theft levels, and a system that makes it increasingly difficult to grow sales while corporate's share stays fixed. This brings us to risks that can break even a well-run operation. Tobacco is declining. In 2015, cigarettes represented 30.9% of convenience store inside sales. By 2024, that number had fallen to 18.8%. A federal menthol ban that would have eliminated 34% of all cigarette sales was proposed and withdrawn in January 2025. The regulatory pressure has not disappeared. Stores that still depend on tobacco as their primary traffic driver are building on ground that is actively eroding. Organized retail crime is accelerating, more brazen, more organized, and in many states, the felony threshold is high enough that individual thefts rarely trigger prosecution. On a separate front, Dollar General and Dollar Tree have expanded into the same rural markets where independent C-stores once had no competition. And long-term, the EV transition chips away at the entire gas brings people in playbook, though charging takes 20 to 30 minutes versus 3 to 5 for gas, which means more dwell time and potentially more in-store spending. The smart operators are already installing chargers. So, after all of that, what does an owner actually take home? An independent single-store operator running a tobacco-heavy shop with no food service takes home $40,000 to $60,000. Talk to one of them, a guy running a 2,000-square-foot box in the Southeast with no food program, and the story is always the same. Revenue, $1.2 million. Gross margin, $320,000. After labor, utilities, shrink, and rent, he takes home $48,000. He has been doing this for 12 years. Add a real food program, and that number can climb to $100,000 or above. A 7-Eleven franchisee, after corporate's split and all expenses, averages $50,000 to $75,000. A multi-store operator running 3 to 5 locations can push net margins toward 10% and take home well above $150,000. These businesses typically sell for 1.8 to 2.4 times owner discretionary earnings. A store generating $120,000 in owner benefit sells for $216,000 to $288,000. That is the price of the entire operation. Here is the honest answer to whether this business makes sense in 2026. The path is not to build a new box from scratch and fill it with tobacco and chips. That model is dying in real time. Its margins are collapsing under declining cigarette volume, rising labor costs, and credit card processing fees that grow every year. The path that actually works is this. Find an independent store still operating on 1995 economics, tobacco-dependent, no food service program, no scan data rebate enrollment, lottery terminal underutilized, no alcohol license in a quota state. Buy it at 2 times earnings. Enroll in every manufacturer rebate program. Build a coffee and food service station. Apply for a lottery terminal if it does not have one. And if you are in a quota state, acquire an alcohol license while they are still available at current prices, because that license will appreciate faster than the business underneath it. The convenience store is not a store. It is a 2,500 square foot platform with 1,100 daily visitors, running 8,760 hours a year, generating revenue from half a dozen streams that most customers never see and most owners never fully optimize. The ones who understand that are not running a store. They are running a traffic machine. Everyone else is just keeping the lights on.